Hello, my friends. Let's start from the good news for Ukraine. Ukraine hit the supply train in Jankoy, the main hub of the Russian army in Crimea. The roads are going via Jankoy to reach Kherson region, occupied part of it, and Zaporizhia region. This time at the train station there was the Russian fuel train. It's kind of usual picture already, and then Ukraine targets Russian trains in Zaporizhia region and now in Crimea. And by the way, 3 days ago Ukraine did the same stuff in the same train station, hitting Russian train hard. But now we have one more case and Russian supplies are being disturbed once again, which will not allow Russia to propel as they want, for example in Zaporizhia front lines. Oh, this is Novoshakhtinsk refinery facility. You see, there were some of the vehicles, some of the local worker or maybe emergency responder films the outcome of the Ukrainian strike on this facility. This is a refinery and also oil storage. Yeah, probably this fire brigade is no more. They were very close to the epicenter of this fire and tanks were igniting one by one, bursting into flames, spreading the wall of fire around, and everything of that is covered with oil. And those are the tanks themselves. As you can see, several of them completely absent. It was a devastating strike on Russian refinery, and this is the refinery tower, which also was hit by drone. It sustained some of the damages. And now let's go for the frontline update. So Ukraine for the first time recognized that Russia entered to Dnipropetrovsk region. Russians even occupied a couple of the villages for the last 24 or maybe 48 hours, because the fights for those were happening for 2 consecutive days. I'm speaking about Zaporizhzhia and Novohorivka villages. Those are small, but we have the confirmation of the Russian advancement. So it was yesterday and it is today. As you see, they move also from Shevchenka, and this is the border of Dnipropetrovsk region. Yeah, on the ground for the soldiers it's the same. There is neither invisible wall nor defense, same fields, same hills, everything is the same. But here Putin wants to show that he enters one more region of Ukraine. So it creates actually this political pressure, yeah? Russia entered Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, Sumy, Kharkiv, which they haven't yet put in their constitution. And logically it tells that the goals of the Russian army are beyond those 5 regions, as Witkov says, which Russia wants to occupy. The real goal of Putin, and he said about it many of the times, is the occupation of entire Ukraine. Or at least they want to establish their pro-Russian regime in Ukraine, which will destroy Ukrainian identity. It's gonna be the second Belarus or even worse. So this region is kind of tricky. In the northern side, Ukrainian army counterattacks in Zeleny High and also in Tolstoy. Both of those settlements were recently liberated, but here Russia has big advantage. And we may go 1 week ago like this, and today you see big Russian movement in this place, and they retreated a little here but moved close to the river near Filia. Well, with this Russian advancement, the risk is going for Kamushivanka village, kind of the small one, but still it's half encircled already, and Ukraine will withdraw from it. And with the next update, we're gonna see this kind of the front line. Is it Ukrainian attack or counterattack towards Perdubova village? It's hard to tell. I would say that this is the area where Russia moves the most, and their goal here is clearly a political one, because from tactical and strategic perspective for them it's better to move forces closer to Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, trying to occupy, to close this pocket, or to Konstantinovka. Yeah, the Russian military command spread their resources all along the front line, and that's why Ukraine has successful counterstrikes, because Russia is in lack of the robust supply lines to maintain their resources, right? But still Russia advances on the front lines. It's logical because they have more of everything. And here in Konstantinovka direction, Russia moved recently with this attack. So it was yesterday, it is today. They entered Bila Hora, not yet fully occupied this village, but fights continue. Alexander Shultine, the small village, if they take this, well, I've told a long time ago that Ukraine should withdraw the forces from this region, because Russia may close this gap, this bottleneck, plus here they offense with this new direction, so they might advance already to Konstantinovka if they occupy the small village, because it's the only village on the way to Konstantinovka actually. So the situation here is difficult, and Ukraine absolutely should move out the forces. Well guys, in general for me it's getting hard to trace the situation on the front lines, because in many of the cases the front lines simply do not exist. It is a new evolution, the new step in this war, attacking with a small forces like sabotage groups. The trenches are out there, but they're under constant drone strikes. So if you deploy your troops to the open trench, expect aviation gliding bombs, expect lots of the drone drops, FPV drones on your positions. So the new tactics is to move the forces all around. It is happening from Ukrainian side and as well as from the Russian side. Remember how this breakthrough started, yeah, with the small sabotage groups, and later on they accumulated forces in some of the tree lines, forest patches, and later on Russia sent extra forces, main forces, mostly infantry on high mobile vehicles. The same as our soldiers were surprised with the Russian presence in Pokrovsk. Russians even managed to ambush Ukrainian pickup truck with its soldiers. But later on Ukraine cut those sabotage groups, kicking them out from Pokrovsk, but still they offense more and more, wave by wave, but this time those waves are way smaller. The war of 2025 is very different from the war of 2024. Then Russia was attacking Ukrainian positions with big convoys of the armored vehicles, tanks and other stuff. 5-10 vehicles was the usual thing for the Russian strikes. I reviewed many of the drone videos showing those convoy being absolutely ambushed by Ukrainian drones. Well, now those strikes are happening very rarely. There are several reasons why. Well, Russia is in lack of those armored vehicles after all, and the flow of the Russian volunteers to join the Russian army is not as high as it was in 2024. Russia learns on its own mistakes and now it implements some sort of the sabotage frontline attacks without front lines themselves. Because yeah, here if you open map, it's really hard to say where those small Russian groups could be. For this reason I see more discrepancies from different military analytics who update those maps. Like for example, here is nothing but Ukrainian counterattack, but if you go to the Miko Center 3 update, you can see that Russia moved towards Novoalexandrovka. Probably just few of the Russian soldiers during the night time with anti-drone gear and anti-drone clothes to mask the thermal trace of the body. They made it here, probably were caputed later on, but it was enough to mark this map as the Russian advancement. Then in fact there were few of the Russian soldiers, but if it was successful attack, if Russia for example accumulated in those woods like 20-30 soldiers, they may send more of the reinforcements to them and they may strike the nearby village, putting their flag there, and Ukraine will have to concentrate the forces for counterattack. That's why we see also more counterattacks happening from Ukrainian side. Yeah, front lines are still out there, mostly on those military maps, but de facto, guys, the front lines are as boily as ever. There is the constant movement, absolutely, and managing this chaos is very difficult for Ukraine and for Russia. You may compare it with intense box fight where each opponent is seeking for a vague spot, with small punches, with fake punches, but everyone is waiting for the major strike at the same time. And it could happen sometime, like for example, this was the punch of the Russian army. I told you about it yesterday. The Kupiansk situation is not good. The only good thing that there is no Russian advancement for the last 24 hours in this direction. Yeah, I would say if Russia cuts this supply road, it's gonna be over for Kupiansk, because with the south road it goes again to Sinkovo across Oskil River, so it's not the road for supplies. No, it's the secondary road. The main road is here, it goes to Shevchenkovo and from Shevchenkovo. Russian command understands that and they ordered the soldiers to go to this big forest patch and cut this road. It's already understandable. And later they aim for the city, and first they want to cut supplies. Alright, what we have here is the Russian Zemlyadelia remote mining system, which was designed recently by Russia a few years. It is kind of the rare guest for those drone videos, nevertheless Ukraine was successful in hitting it with a drone drop. It's no-go, absolutely, like in video game, right? It had some of the mines inside because there was the big kaboom. Russia has just few of those systems. Minus Grad system for Russians, Ukraine hits them very far away from the front lines. The drone range increased dramatically. And those are our guys in Pokrovsk. It seems like Russian sabotage groups again entered the settlement, because I saw how this tank worked on this building, multi-story building. We also have the drone coordination of the tank's job here. Well, if there were Russians, there are no more. Already a standard Russian tank modification with a plug in the front and anti-drone wires, or how to call it. That's the reality of the war, and Ukraine also uses this kind of the style of the armor. But it doesn't help. For example, this tank was kaboomed by Ukrainian drone strike. Yeah, it was kaboom. Some sort of the BTR maybe even, because it's fast, was moving on the back, but I'm not sure what is that. And here, guys, are the losses for the last week. Russia lost so many tanks. It is crazy. Yes, there were a couple of the directions where Russia tried to offense with numerous of the tanks, and we have confirmation images. OSINT Analytics published the data that Russia lost 42 of the vehicles for the last week, Ukraine 26, so almost 2 times less, maybe a little more. Ukraine lost 4 tanks and Russia 15. This is crazy. Even one Russian tank was captured. It happens very rarely, because advancing to the gray zone is very risky. Plus, look at the infantry fighting vehicles. 7 against 1, but Ukraine lost more of the infantry mobile vehicles, MRAPs, because Ukraine has the most of those. And I hope that our partners will supply Ukraine with more of those vehicles. United States, Europe, and here we see armored personnel carrying vehicles. So yeah, Russia advances not just with infantry from what I must see, but usually they lose it behind the front lines, and they offense actually with the small sabotage groups. They deliver those using tanks as a backup for the infantry vehicles. They land those as close as possible to Ukrainian positions, and later on Russian sabotage groups or Russian infantry advance further on their feet. In many of the cases, they're just been zeroed. So if we speak about the general picture on the front lines, I would say that the Russian summer offensive failed. And here the Bild source writes the same: the Putin summer offensive gescheitert. It means not successful, failed. Well, this summer Russians occupied, almost fully occupied, Chasiv Yar and almost fully occupied Toretsk. But the fights for Chasiv Yar continue for 2 years. For Toretsk also it is a long-lasting campaign. Yes, now Russia managed to create the huge threat in Konstantinivka, in Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, in Kupiansk, but we are getting closer to the cold time, and Russia will struggle more during the winter campaign. They will not be able to propel really fast as they've done with the breakthrough in Pokrovsk-Dobropila direction, which was cut by Ukrainian emergency fire brigades. So as the summer comes to its end, I may say yes, the offensive of Russia failed, and they want to reach their goals using diplomatic levers, like, for example, forcing our allies from the United States to agree on Russian proposal for Ukraine to give up the territories without any fights. My friends, there's gonna be one more video update. Stay tuned. I'm gonna publish it as soon as possible, probably in a few hours. And thank you for making this content possible with your kind support on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is in the video description just below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.